I was making eggs when the sky split open, sunny side up, bit of cracked pepper, just like my wife used to make. Before the Cepharids turned her to ash, we'd been told for months that a diplomatic resolution was in progress. That Earth's Joint Council had open channels with the galactic hegemony. That war was unthinkable. Unthinkable. That's what they called it when 17 orbital stations vanished over the Pacific, leaving a 1,000-mile stretch of ocean to boil into steam. I watched the live streams on the kitchen hollow. Saw whole cities gone. No warning. No chance to evacuate. My hand shook as the fork dropped from my fingers. The eggs half-cooked, hissing against the pan. That's the moment something inside me cracked. Not broke, cracked, like metal under pressure. We'd tried peace. We'd tried diplomacy. But what do you do when the other side doesn't even see you as alive? They didn't invade with troops. Not at first. No dramatic landing craft. No marching armies. Just blue fire from the sky, leveling everything. Power grids collapsed. Satellites blinded. The world plunged into digital darkness. I was a schoolteacher then, used to read poetry to 8th graders. Now, I carry the memories of 64 of them, burned alive when their evacuation bus was reduced to a carbon shadow outside Seattle. I found the wreckage myself. Their mistake, the aliens' mistake, was thinking that fear would make us submit, that we'd fall to our knees, beg for mercy, offer servitude in exchange for survival. But rage? Rage is a human fuel. We don't just burn it, we weaponize it. The resistance didn't start in bunkers or military bases. It started in grocery stores, with strangers sharing rations, in broken cities, where gangs of teenagers reactivated old ham radios and reached across ruined states, in scorched fields, where farmers buried loved ones with one hand and loaded rifles with the other. The government fractured, the military was scattered, but the people, us, we rose. I joined them in the ashes of Portland. The first cell wasn't much, just 7 of us. For civilians, 2 ex-Marines, 1 old woman named Hani who used to be a coder in Silicon Valley, now rewiring anti-aircraft batteries from scrap. We had no real weapons, but we had history. See, humans are strange creatures. We cry over music, mourn fictional characters, and fall in love in war zones. But when you kill what we love, we don't just get angry. We remember. We endure. And then we return. The Cepharids broadcast demands in flawless, artificially learned English. Their voice was calm, mechanical. Surrender your weapons and civic control. Compliance ensures continuation of species. Resistance will be met with terminal cleansing. I remember laughing when I first heard it. Continuation of species? They really thought survival was our highest priority. That shows how little they understood what it means to be human. You see, survival is just instinct, but vengeance, that's personal. And humans? We're the galaxy's most vindictive animal. I watched my friends die one by one. Hani was the first. Drones got her while she was rigging a bridge near the Columbia River. But not before she fried 3 alien tank walkers and left the Cepharid convoy blind for a week. Then Rico, our medic, took a plasma round in the gut, trying to pull out a mother and her kid. He died whispering his wife's name. We buried them in silence. No speeches. No music. Just rage, thick in the air like gunpowder. Every death cut deeper. Every sacrifice etched into our bones. And every time we lost someone, the flame inside us grew hotter, brighter. The aliens didn't realize it, but they weren't killing our will to fight. They were forging something ancient, older than governments, older than nations. Human wrath, not the kind that explodes and fades. No, this was the slow-burning kind, the kind that waits, plans, evolves. We studied them. We learned, not just their tech, but their patterns. How they assumed we were primitive, uncoordinated. How their machines relied on predictable signals. How they always underestimated non-military targets. Turns out, humans are damn good at being underestimated. In the ruins of old missile silos, we built not just bombs, stories. networks, alliances. Rage made us resourceful, made us united. We became the fire they couldn't put out. And me? I became something else. The man who once recited poetry in classrooms now rigs plasma charges under alien command posts. I've strangled Cepharids with my bare hands, memorized the way their blood smells. I don't feel guilt anymore, just clarity. They thought they understood war. They thought we'd kneel. But they didn't understand rage. Not yet, but they would. Oh, they would. I still carry that flag. Charred, torn down the middle, half its stars burned away. But it's mine. Pulled it from the rubble of a courthouse they vaporized on day 73. Used to fly proud above the building. Now it stays wrapped around my left arm like a second skin. Not out of nationalism. Not for politics. For memory. We don't have cities anymore, just ruins with names. They leveled D.C., turned Berlin to molten glass, cracked Tokyo into the sea. But the real damage wasn't physical. It was psychological. The Cepharids didn't invade to conquer. They invaded to erase. Entire cultures? Deleted. Archives? Purged. Their machines sought out art museums, libraries, even old record stores. Anything human, anything that said we were here, they scrubbed clean, efficiently, methodically. We called them archivores. Not soldiers. Not hunters. Devourers of history. If that doesn't make your blood boil, nothing will. By the time I joined Alaska Cells, we were already considered a lost continent by the hegemony. The satellites were gone, but so were the orbital scans. They assumed we were dead. A grave planet. That was their first mistake. The second was underestimating how good humans are at war in the cold. You ever fight in -40? With the wind howling like it's screaming the names of the dead? Try laying still in snow for 12 hours, waiting for the perfect shot on an alien transport. No heat signature. No motion. Just your breath, barely exhaled. That's what we did, all across the North. We didn't fight fair. That a luxury of empires, not survivors. We poisoned their water. Sabotaged their drone hives with ancient malware. Turned wildlife against them by hacking bio-beacons into their environmental processors. Moose attacks went from accidental to strategic. They came in ships that folded space. We came with hatchets and home-built EMPs. They came with logic. We came with fury. I'll never forget my first face-to-face kill. It wasn't clean. Their foot soldiers weren't Cepharids exactly, more like engineered hybrids. Viscous armor, hive-linked eyes, fast, strong, but they bled. God, did they bleed. We hit their convoy outside an old oil refinery, caught them mid-refuel. I remember the flames first, black smoke curling into the pale sky. Then the scream of something not human, not machine, caught between programming and agony. It lunged. I shot twice. Missed both. Then it was on me. We wrestled in snow stained with fire. Its claws caught my jaw. Ripped skin. I drove a sharpened crowbar through its throat. It gurgled, writhed, twitched. I looked into its flickering eyes and saw nothing. No regret. No confusion. Just calculation. They weren't here to win. They were here to finish us. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't war. Not to them. This was extermination wrapped in protocol. But we don't follow protocols when we're dying. We get ugly. We get vicious. We get creative. The Alaskan cells grew into something more, something tribal. Family by fire. Blood-bound. We didn't wear uniforms. We wore scars. Every unit had a name. Ours was simple. Wrathborn. We didn't salute. We howled. Before every ambush. Before every charge. It became our ritual, our defiance. And then came the broadcast. It cut across every frequency. Every stolen comm channel. Every hacked drone link. To the remnants of humanity. This is your final calibration. Your species is an emotional instability. Logic will correct your path. Resistance is a threat to planetary equilibrium. Compliance is the only option. The voice was smooth, synthesized, confident, until we hacked it. Not the message, the voice. A woman in our cell, Jules. She was a sound engineer back in the old world, used to record audiobooks for kids. She took their message and spliced it, twisted it, rebroadcast it galaxy-wide to a stolen transmitter array in Anchorage. Her version said, "We hear you. We understand your logic, but logic is cold. We are not cold. We are rage. You will not correct us. You will burn with us." That was the first time we knew they were listening, because the next day they sent something new, something bigger. The sky over Anchorage blackened, completely. No stars, no moon, just a thrum, a sound you felt in your bones before you heard it in your ears. Their collector-class ships, the kind used for planetary reclamation. They didn't come to fight. They came to harvest. But we were ready, not to win, not to survive, but to send a message. We were still here, and we were done being prey. I looked up at that black sky, wrapped that burned flag tighter around my arm, and whispered to myself, "Come on, then, learn what rage really means." I never expected to leave Earth again, not after what the Cepharids did to our skies, not after the last shuttles fell, their flaming wreckage carving trails of defeat across the stratosphere. Earth was a broken world, but it was ours, and we were never leaving again. That was the plan, until we found the gate. It wasn't a wormhole. Not quite. The Cepharids called it an inversion fold array, a kind of subspace transport hub buried under the Arctic ice, hidden in a sealed vault from a war fought long before humans walked upright, a remnant of their ancient empire, one they'd forgotten, one we found first. Jules cracked the AI lock with a piece of 1980s Russian code. Don't ask me how. What mattered was this. For the first time in 2 years, humanity had a doorway off Earth, and we had a choice. We could run, start over, find some distant moon, and scrape out an existence like rats in the walls of the universe. Or we could go through that gate and make them pay. Wrathborn didn't hesitate. We sent a drone through first. It burned out after 2 minutes, but not before transmitting coordinates. An alien spaceport, undermanned, light defenses, somewhere on the edge of Cepharid-controlled territory. It was a cargo node, a logistics spine. Crack it, and the entire Cephrid supply line fractures. I volunteered before they even finished reading the mission brief. They called it suicide. I called it clarity. I trained in zero-G using an old Cold War simulator rig scavenged from a museum. Our weapons? Hybridized, human steel and alien plasma tech lashed together with ingenuity and spite. Our armor? Mostly repurposed mining exosuits lined with thermal foil and rage. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were fire. We launched into fold 6 days later, myself, Jules, a former French paratrooper named Remy, and 2 others. We didn't speak much during the descent. The gate ripped at us. Not just our bodies, our memories. It dragged them into the open, like tape being unwound. I saw my wife again. Her final moment, the fire in her eyes. Her scream, trapped in time. And then black, then stars. We arrived inside a maintenance shaft under the Cephrid port. Gravity light, air sharp, everything humming with that alien harmony. They built with symmetry, efficiency, no soul, no signs of joy or creativity. Just function. That was their weakness. Because rage doesn't care about symmetry. We split up. Remy and I went for the power core. Jules and the others took the communications grid. No alarms, no resistance, until we reached the cooling basin and saw them, Cephrid larvae, hundreds of them, kept in vats, fed intravenously. No mouths, no eyes, just translucent sacs twitching in silence. Remy froze. "They're young," he said. "They don't know war." I didn't answer, just stared at them. That's when I realized something. They weren't young. They weren't growing. They were being copied, printed, grown for extermination. I felt the pressure build behind my eyes. That old heat, that whisper in my skull that said, "Show them what pain tastes like." I planted the charges myself. 10 minutes later, the vats turned to liquid fire. The detonation triggered a cascade. Power grid failure, structural collapse, atmospheric breach. We expected to die in the blast. But Jules found a ship, an old cargo freighter, rusted, under repair. We hijacked it, tore out the navigation failsafes, and rode that beast through a debris field of our own making, barreling through plasma bolts and collision warnings and Cepharid shrieks echoing through their comms. We escaped, barely, but we escaped with data, their star maps, logistics routes, weak points. We gave humanity a blueprint for vengeance. And for the first time in this war, they noticed. They sent a message, broadcast across every frequency they knew we used. Human anomaly. Your interference has been categorized as viral rage. This phenomenon is unsustainable. Containment protocols will escalate. They didn't say surrender. They said contain, because now they understood. Human rage wasn't a glitch. It was a plague, and it had spread to their stars. They didn't have a word for retreat, not in their language, not in any of the cracked lexicons we tore out of their archives. The Cepharids had no concept of losing. For millennia, they had simply moved forward, like a glacier of logic grinding through the stars. Every species they encountered bent, broke, or was simply absorbed. No resistance lasted more than a few cycles. None had returned after defeat. Until us, until Earth. And now, for the first time in their long, perfect history, they ran. It started at the edge bastions, those cold, forgotten outposts on the rim of their empire, the ones they barely man anymore. We hit them with small teams, surgical, brutal, fast. No fleets, no banners, just fire and vengeance, delivered through the dark. Raft-born grew. Other resistance cells started linking up, across the Pacific Crater Zone, in the Andes Redoubt, deep inside the shattered bones of what used to be Johannesburg. We stopped calling ourselves survivors. Now we were the Burned Legion, humanity's second army, not sanctioned, not ordered, forged in fire and screaming. Each assault was different. No pattern, no protocol, just chaos. We hit comms relays, refinery planets, orbital nerve centers. They tried to adapt. They couldn't, because they didn't understand what they were fighting. Not rage in the moment, but rage over time. They didn't understand what happens when you give humans a cause, when you kill our children and burn our cities and try to erase our stories. We don't surrender. We multiply. The turning point came at Cepharids 7, a fortress moon orbiting one of their inner trade routes. Heavily guarded, considered impenetrable. We penetrated it in 36 minutes. No, we didn't march in. We infiltrated. Disguised as a scavenger barge we cobbled together from the freighter we hijacked on our last run. Jules rewired its signature to match a pirate signal from their own black market. We were waved through without a second scan. Then we opened the cargo bay and unleashed everything. EMP warheads, old Earth nukes we'd recovered from polar vaults, plasma slag mortars, a few suicide drones with the names of fallen cities etched into their frames. I was on the ground team, hit the interior citadel. I still remember the way their command nodes looked, towering pylons of living metal, veins pulsing with data. They shimmered like crystal, beautiful in a monstrous way. We brought them down with blunt force and homemade code viruses screaming poetry from the 20th century. We didn't just kill the command structure. We humiliated it, and the Cepharids ran. Not a tactical withdrawal, a panicked, scattered retreat. I watched their transport vessels flee orbit, jettisoning data cores and incinerating their own archives to prevent capture. But it was too late. We already had them. Their tactics, their biology, their unholy algorithm that treated empathy like a disease. And when we returned to Earth, broadcasting our victory from high orbit, they heard us. Billions of humans, still in hiding, rose up that day. 100 more resistance factions came online. Burn flags were raised. Names of the dead were shouted from mountaintops. Even the animals had begun to change. Cepharid wildlife suppression systems began to fail. Wolves returned to the ruins of Europe. Bears walked the irradiated fields of Montana. Packs of scavenging dogs followed us into battle, drawn to something primal, as if the planet itself was waking up, as if Earth was angry too. I sat with Jules at night, around a fire burning, on what used to be a SpaceX launch pad. She looked at the stars, now visible again, and asked me, "Do you think they finally get it?" I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't care if they understood. Understanding is for diplomats. Pain is for conquerors. And the Cepharids were finally starting to feel it. We thought we understood them. Thought we'd peeled back the last layer of their cold, logical machine empire and found only cruelty and code. A predator species with silicon hearts and crystal bones, dragging their hive fleet across galaxies, purging the chaos of emotion wherever they found it. But we were wrong. We didn't understand them. Not really. Not until we breached the vault at Stellar Point Zeta 19. It wasn't a military target. No guards. No weapons. Just a planetoid cloaked in recursive gravity shell, hidden deep within the Eridanus drift. We only found it because of a glitch, some corrupted files, and a Cepharid command ship we cracked back in Chapter Station Theta. The files weren't tactical. They weren't even encrypted. They were sealed memories, logs, from before they called themselves Cepharid, before they became gods of sterilization. We followed the trail. 6 ships, 10 crews, no backup. The vault wasn't a base. It was a tomb. Beneath the surface, we found corridors carved from obsidian, smooth and curved, almost organic. It wasn't built by their machines. Not precision cut. Not patterned. It was emotional, terrifying in its beauty. And on the lowest floor, we found the chamber. Cepharid figures, frozen in a kind of stasis. 6 of them, preserved in translucent crystal. Not warriors, not leaders, scientists. Next to them, a relic, a globe, not of their world, of Earth. I couldn't breathe. Jules ran a spectral scan on the core structure. Her voice cracked when she read the timestamp. 40 million years old. We thought she was wrong. Delirious. But the data didn't lie. The Cepharids didn't just find Earth. They remembered it. They had been there before. They didn't invade us because we were dangerous. They invaded us because they had seen something in us. A seed, planted eons ago and long forgotten. A mirror, a mistake. They weren't aliens to us. They were our future. A branch of humanity that split before we had names, before we crawled out of the oceans. A race that embraced logic over love. Cold calculation over chaos. They left the cradle of Earth in some forgotten age, rose through the stars, and decided to fix the universe by removing everything that reminded them of what they had lost. Emotion, art, anger, hope. And when they found us, modern humans, they saw not wonder, not curiosity. They saw aggression. They saw a version of themselves they thought they had purged. We weren't just targets. We were their shame, their past, roaring back across the stars, dressed in fire and blood and rage. That's why they tried to erase us. Not for conquest, for control. I stood in that vault, staring at the frozen faces of our ancient kin, and I felt the heat again, hotter than any plasma blast or solar flare. Rage didn't even cover it. This was sacred wrath now. They had torn our world apart, erased our cities, murdered billions, all to hide the truth that they, too, had once cried, loved, raged, and we, the broken, bleeding, grieving survivors of shattered Earth. We were the last evidence that feeling mattered, that it endured. Remy planted the explosives without a word. Jules copied the files and injected them into every comm buoy from here to Andromeda. We didn't just destroy that vault. We made sure the truth could never be buried again. By the time the Cepharid response fleet arrived, we were gone, ghosts in a ship stitched together by spite and leftover hope, racing back through the fold. And as we crossed the event horizon, I looked back at the flickering star of that dying planetoid, not with fear, not even with hate, but with something worse. Pity, because they thought killing us would bury their past. Instead, they unleashed the one force they spent eons trying to erase. Humanity, at full burn. The vault changed everything. Not just for us, not just for Earth, for the entire galaxy. Jules uploaded the truth. The Cepharids buried past, their human origin, their shameful purge of emotion, spread like wildfire through the hegemony's neural net. Every sentient race within transmission range received it. Some didn't believe it, but some did, and those were enough. The galaxy had always feared the Cepharids, feared their logic, their cold, calculated cleansing. Most species submitted before the first orbital bombardment, hoping appeasement would preserve their cultures in some museum of obedience. But now they saw the Cepharids weren't gods. They were liars. And we, ragged, ruined, scarred beyond reason, we were an infection. We were the cure. The rebellion didn't start with armies. It started with refusals. A cargo colony on Hezzer, for refuse to transmit their annual compliance codes. A mining ring near the Grawl Divide rerouted a Cepharid patrol ship into a black hole and called it technical error. And on the gas moon Orin Theta, a full planetary AI committed digital suicide just to broadcast a single message. We choose emotion. We watched the whole thing unfold from the edge of Proxima Gate. I remember standing beside Remy as the starfield pulsed with Calm's chatter and static laced with defiance. His voice was quiet. "They're finally doing it," he whispered. "They're feeling." But the Cepharids didn't break. Not right away. They adapted, like they always did. They split into factions. Two leaders emerged. Two philosophies. The continuum. Pure logic. Purge the past. Accelerate the extermination. No more containment. No more delay. And then the Riftborn. Cepharids who had felt something. Who saw the truth of their origin and recoiled. Some wanted peace. Some wanted atonement. Others just wanted answers. But one thing was clear. What had once been a monolithic control was now fracturing. And we, humanity, with a hammer that split the stone. Our next move was impossible. Unthinkable. But necessary. We were going to strike the Singularity Core. The Cepharids' origin point. Their central system, buried deep in a gravity-locked star cluster at the heart of their empire. The place where they stored everything. Memory. Code. History. Their equivalent of a soul. No one had ever been there. Not even most of them. The coordinates were locked behind quantum encryptions. We only cracked because of a dying Riftborn defector named Valith. Half machine, half mad. His body was collapsing under emotional feedback. He looked at us like a child seeing fire for the first time. "You burn," he said, coughing nanite-laced blood, "and the galaxy warms." He died smiling. The mission was suicide. We all knew it. There wasn't a ship fast enough. Not a fleet strong enough. So we didn't send a fleet. We sent a virus. Me, Jules, Remy, and a drive core rigged with something worse than nuclear. It wasn't just a bomb. It was human memory. We'd learned how their Singularity Core worked, how it constantly purged emotional data, overriding it with logic. It couldn't be infected by weapons, but it could be corrupted by stories. So we loaded it with everything. The screams, the art, the laughter, the grief, the final recordings of the Seattle evacuation, the cries of children, the roars of defiant soldiers, the poetry of dead mothers, the last words of doomed lovers transmitted from burning orbital stations. We turned human experience into a weapon, and we carried it into the dark. I'll never forget breaching the core field. The ship groaned under pressure no vessel should have survived. Remy lost consciousness. Jules bled from her ears, fingers twitching over a cracked console. I held the trigger. One press. All or nothing. But before I did it, I looked out through the forward viewport, and I saw the core. It wasn't a fortress. It wasn't a machine. It was a mirror, glowing, reflecting us, as if the Cepharids had never stopped looking back at what they used to be, as if somewhere deep inside all their logic, all their extermination programs, there had always been fear. Fear that if they remembered, they'd break. I pressed the trigger. The payload fired, not with light, but with feeling, and then the galaxy screamed. I remember silence, not the kind that follows death, not the eerie vacuum of space, or the stillness after battle. This was different. The silence after we fired the payload into the Singularity Core wasn't absence. It was absorption. The galaxy paused. Every Cepharid node went quiet. Every dreadnought. Every drone. Every beacon. like the entire machine empire had exhaled for the first time in a million years and didn't know how to inhale again. We didn't hear a boom. We heard us. The payload worked. Too well, maybe. The core didn't explode. It felt. The moment human emotion entered it, their great machine mind didn't reject the infection. It opened to it. It was never about logic versus chaos. It was about memory versus denial. They had buried emotions so deep inside themselves for so long that the moment it was reawakened, it overwhelmed them. All at once, every Cephrid across the stars was hit with the collective weight of our pain, our rage, our songs, our joy, and it broke them. Some fell screaming from the sky, flagships crashing into their own planets, convulsing under floods of sensory overload. Others simply stopped, floating dead in orbit, lights flickering, weapons silent. And then there were the ones who changed. The Riftborn surged. Their voices joined galactic airwaves, raw, unfiltered, erratic with grief and guilt. We were blind, but we are not dead. We remember the first fire. We remember being human. In the aftermath, peace didn't come immediately, because we weren't the same. None of us were. Remy died on a return jump. His body gave out from neurofeedback. He smiled at the end, said he finally felt his daughter's hug again, the one he lost in Paris. Jules lived long enough to see the core fracture, then collapsed in my arms, whispering one last line of poetry she'd embedded into the virus. Let them feel everything. I buried her on a moon that didn't have a name. I gave it one. Ashlight. As for me, I wandered, not as a soldier, not anymore. I became a myth, a ghost, the last carrier of human vengeance. They say I lit the stars on fire, that I brought the Cepharids to their knees, that I killed a god machine with nothing but memory and rage. The truth? I'm just a man who made eggs on the morning the sky fell. And now I walk among new worlds, human and not, where songs are sung again, where stories are told, where children learn not just logic, but love. The burned legion disbanded years ago. We weren't needed anymore. The war ended, but something else began. We didn't just survive. We ascended, not as conquerors, as a reminder that no matter how far you run from yourself, no matter how deeply you bury feeling, you cannot kill the one truth that burns brighter than any sun. Humanity remembers, and when we rage, we do not rage alone.